So, hi and welcome to another edition of our People First interview series, where we shine a light on great companies, not just do interesting and cool work, but most importantly, they look after their people. Identifi Global is a market leader in personalised career management and talent acquisition consultancy, and we specialise in the legal tech sector, and we guarantee great candidate experience. I'm really excited today to be joined by Guy Stern, co-founder and CEO of Legal Connection. Legal Connection provides a case management tool which is designed for remote teams, remote and virtual teams, and legal networks. Hi Guy, how are you doing?
Hey, great. How are you doing this morning?
I've probably done you a disservice there, so I apologise. But maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself, Guy, and bring Legal Connection to life a little bit before we kick off.
Sure thing. Well, you could probably hear by my accent that I'm South African. In London, and I'm not a lawyer myself, so I come from a computer science background. I studied computer science. I ran a web development shop for about 10 years, building various apps and web apps for clients. And back in 2017, I just sort of came to the realization, hey, I'm pretty good at sort of figuring out, customer needs, creating functional specifications, and building out web apps for my clients. I wonder if I could build a web app which would be, for me, a business, a startup.
Yeah.
And so originally I just came up with the a thought of, wouldn't it be great to do a startup and to build some piece of software? And I looked for different ideas in different spaces, and one place that I found a need is in the legal space. I just happened that I'd been interfacing with a law firm. They'd done a little bit of work for me. I found the experience to be a little trying at times. Dealing with lawyers can be difficult. They, you have to often send them emails and wait for responses, or go and sit at their office and land up telling the same story over and over again. So I came up with this concept of, wouldn't it be great if there was an online tool where you could be chatting to one or more lawyers, where you could be sharing files with them, where you could be tracking the work that they did in real time. And that's what I decided to build. That's Legal Connection.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, I had a look at the product. It's it seems so straightforward and simple, and it seems crazy that these things haven't been thought of before. So you must have been delighted when you realised that it wasn't something like that in place.
Well, I was met with a lot of opposition, actually. I showed you the demo the other day, and it looks a little bit like WhatsApp Web. And this was to the horror of many lawyers who said, well, why would I want to be in a WhatsApp conversation with my client all day? I'm trying to get them off WhatsApp. A lot of law firms have actually banned WhatsApp. It's very difficult to bill when someone's sending you questions out of the blue the whole time. There's lots of security concerns around using a product which is on your phone, where files are floating around. So it wasn't like this aha moment and then clear sailing. I'm still today met with a lot of opposition about the product. Some people love it, some people hate it. But one thing that keeps driving me is the fact that when people see it for the first time, like the demo I showed you the other day, there's this little light which goes off, and they say, wow, this is interesting.
Yeah. So you came to the UK in 2019, sort of around July 2019. So you're really here for 8 or so months before COVID hit us. How have you found being in a new country, lockdown and trying to launch a new business? How's that been?
Yeah, well, I came to London because this, one of the big reasons was this is a legal tech capital. I feel like I was building legal tech, and I wanted to be closer to the action, closer to the accelerators, closer to the venture capitalists. And that worked. I was here. I was accepted into the Antler Accelerator, and then I was accepted into phase 2 of the Antler Accelerator, where we actually won pre-seed funding of £120,000, which was amazing. For someone from South Africa with a little idea to get given £120,000 to build your product was really cool. And that would never have happened if I was still in Cape Town, or it would have been a lot more difficult. And then to sort of get in the faces of our clients, and to shop the product around to VC firms, it was really nice being in London. But I think that something weird that happened when lockdown started was I started being able to do those meetings a lot quicker. The expectation when you're a founder is that if you're going to see, whether you're seeing a prospective client or whether you're seeing an investor, you're going to get on the tube, you're going to go to their office, you're going to sit in the waiting room for about half an hour, you're going to get called up to some boardroom, you're going to have your chat, and you're going to get back on the tube, go back to the office, and a meeting can literally eat up a whole day.
Yeah.
Whereas now things are quite democratized. You know, I can have that same meeting on a Zoom call. It can start, it can end, and I can get on with my day, and I can get a lot more done. So
you've actually found it's actually helped you in that sense. It's actually made you more efficient.
For sure. You know, I hate to see the sort of rosy side of the pandemic. But yeah, in my industry and the stuff that we do, it's definitely changed everything. And I'm not sure whether it's going to go back to normal or what is normal. I think the same pleasure that I have in being able to do these calls quickly and get them done, the other party has the same pleasure. No one wants to sit around and, you know, stand on ceremony just to get a meeting done. No one wants to spend 3 hours to get a half an hour meeting.
Yeah. So if we can just talk briefly, so and you know, obviously got some positives out of this. So, but obviously lots of companies have you know, struggled through this stage, and perhaps you can describe what it was like for you. You know, bearing in mind you're really relatively new. All of a sudden this global pandemic's here. You know, have you sat there and thought opportunity, or have you sat there and thought, okay, what do we do now? You know, what were the conversations going on between perhaps you and Stefan, your co-founder?
Yeah, well, it didn't come at a very good time because we went to Antler, sort of August last year, we got our first bout of funding, and then January this year, January 2020, we had our demo day. And the point in demo day is to sort of stand up in front of the world and say, this is us, this is what we've built, please invest in us. Then you get a whole lot of business cards of VC firms that want to see you, and then over sort of February, March, April, you're supposed to go and have all those meetings, and then someone's supposed to cut you a check. In theory. So the pandemic sort of came just at the wrong time in that respect, because those meetings that we were having with VC firms, they sort of dried up. The meetings went online, but a lot of the VC firms didn't know if they were still investing or if they weren't investing. You know, a lot of VCs came out with statements saying that they're not going to be making any new investments for now. They're rather going to be supporting the companies that they've already invested in. And so, you know, it wasn't easy sailing for us at all from that perspective. We were running out of money. We were running out of sort of options in terms of finding an investor. And so we just had to sort of buckle down and focus on product and focus on what we could control. And that's what we did.
Yeah. So
I would say on the plus side, though, we're building legal tech. We're building a product that helps lawyers connect with each other on their phones, on their laptops. I'd been using this expression, laptop lawyers,
right,
you know, to sort of lawyers that work out of coffee shops, that work from their PC at home. And it was a kind of a weird thing to explain to someone who works at law firm, because majority of law firms, the lawyers still use desktop computers. The law firms don't want lawyers to take their computers home. Because, you know, of all these sort of cybersecurity issues that the law firms have just never really properly addressed. So when the lockdown happened, literally every single law firm became a virtual law firm overnight. Everyone had to figure out how to work remotely, and so that made the case for Legal Connection a lot better. It's a lot easier for me to sell a product that works around remote law when every lawyer is working remotely. So that was the upside for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting because in most cases the technology was already there, and we've now accelerated the use of that, and now we're playing catch up with the adoption of those you know, those technologies. So it's been fascinating to see, you know, various firms and how they've this has enabled them, and some firms where it's crushed them, because, you know, it has been so on-premise type, you know, technology. So speaking of, you know, virtual, so your co-founder Stefan, he's based in Austria, is that right?
Exactly.
So how's that dynamic work? You know, how have you guys remained connected and on the same page, you know, building a fast growing startup?
I think that, to be honest, you know, Stefan is a developer himself, so he is one of these people who loves remote work anyway. He wasn't all keen on coming to the office too much. At the time when the pandemic hit, the two of us were working out of the Microsoft reactor. in the center of London. So we had the coolest office, ping pong tables, free ice cream, beer on tap, you name it. So if anyone was hit really hard by this, it was me. I was very depressed when I heard that our office would be closing. And for some reason, I didn't think it was going to happen. Even though I saw everything closing around us, this office was closing, that office was closing, I just somehow felt like Microsoft would stay open. And I didn't know how I was going to get work done, because I really felt that, like, the offices where I see people, and when I arrive there in the morning and say hello to everyone and see the smile on people, like, I really lived for those moments. But talking just for myself, I found it quite easy to adapt to remote work. I'm still communicating with people all day long. Look, you and I are having a face-to-face conversation right now. And I think my co-founder Stefan is happier. He got to go home to Austria and do the same job that he was doing, but with his family who lives over on that side. Our key developer Travis lives in South Africa, so we never see him anyway. Our other developer Ashish lives in India, so I've never met him ever.
Okay.
Even though we've been working together for 2 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're a remote team by default. We're building remote software. Everything we do, we use project tracking tools like Asana. We obviously use our own product, Legal Connection, as much as possible. WhatsApp groups. I'm a big believer in productivity software, and that's what we're building, and it works.
Do you think this is giving you more confidence to, as and when you do expand, to recruit globally, to get the best talent? Actually, there's no boundaries anymore. There's, like you say, you can recruit anywhere in the world.
Definitely. I myself, I've always been this believer that, you should be sitting in the same room as someone. But I think I'm wrong. I think that, what I've learned in the last few months is that you get the most out of people often when they're able to sit and do their thing. And you have times when you talk. Myself and Stefan have a Saturday meeting every Saturday morning. There's no work. We get on the phone and we just talk. And it's nothing to do with business. It's a, how you doing sort of conversation. Did I do anything to upset you this week? Did you do anything to upset me? That sort of, how's life? What sort of things stress you out? And we just connect with each other on a personal level, which I think is important, and I would recommend that to anyone. And it's on the calendar, but it's not on a weekday or anything like that. You're relaxed. There's no deadlines, and we just connect in that way.
I think people underestimate those moments. I think it's often referred to as like the water cooler moment. Where you just say, hey, how you doing? And it's not work related, and actually it's talking about your weekend or your hobbies or whatever it is. It's that aspect of working together, I think, is the bit that's been missed in a lot of organisations, because they just jump straight onto a Teams call and it becomes straight into business. You've got none of that sort of chit chat before and after these days.
Exactly. Look, I do think that what we do during the lockdown, a lot of it is sort of drawing on the relationships that we made before. So, while I was at Microsoft, while I was at Antler, back when I was still interfacing with people in the real world, I amassed, 100 contacts. And now during lockdown, I can pick and choose from those 100 contacts and say, hey, buddy, hey, Pete, wouldn't you like to appear with me on this podcast? Or, hey, wouldn't you, could you invest in our crowdfunding campaign? Or could you introduce me to this person from your network? So I think that it's, I don't think we can live in a world where we're always locked down. I think we do, although that being said, how did you and I get in contact with each other? It's
through LinkedIn.
Have a single, person in common.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's I think it forces people to reach out where they probably wouldn't have done before. So yeah, I think it's gonna force lots of new relationships, which is great, and maybe end a few old ones. Sometimes it's good to cut a few old relationships in that sense. So
yeah.
So we've gone through that trials and tribulations of panic and lockdown and not knowing what comes next. So we've reached that sort of equilibrium stage where everyone's starting to say, you know what, we just got to get on with it. So your product provides secure communication and collaboration for legal teams. You're enabling people to work remotely. COVID must have come at a great time for you. Has lockdown allowed you to focus on your product in any different ways, and maybe now that it's more essential to work remotely, have you done anything, any upgrades, features, benefits? You've got an opportunity to sell your product a little bit.
One thing that people asked us for almost immediately was Zoom integration,
Okay.
which we added to the platform. Also Google Docs integration we added to the platform somewhat recently because, lawyers who are working on the same files at the same time like the idea of working in a Google Doc. I think that part of our product and what makes Legal Connection great is that it's a new way of working where it's less about the video call or about the in-person coffee meeting, and it's more about the power of asynchronous communication. So, the ability to, and I'm sure you're in loads of different WhatsApp groups, and you're probably in lots of Slack channels, and you have this ability to sort of dip in and out of conversations. So someone could send you a message at 1 o'clock, and then you could look at it at 2 o'clock and respond, and then someone else can respond at 3 o'clock, and work can slowly get done in that way. And that is a paradigm shift, which we use a lot in tech. So, I come from a tech background, I come from a software development background. As software developers, we were using asynchronous communication almost before the internet. We were using bulletin board systems, and we had developers from all around the world building software together in different countries. So when I looked at legal for the first time, my first observation about the legal profession was that it's quite similar to software development. Lawyers do something similar to us. They solve problems. And the first time you solve a problem, it can take you a few weeks. But if someone asks you to solve that same exact problem, again, you can do it in a few hours if you've done it once before. And that's something that lawyers and software developers, I think, have in common. And then the other thing that we have in common is that if I'm trying to solve a problem and I can't, I can ask one of my colleagues. And if they've solved that problem a few weeks ago, they can just pass me the work that they did, and I can make a few edits. And lawyers work in a similar way. If one lawyer in a team has just drafted a certain kind of document, another lawyer in the team needs the same document or needs the same problem solved, they can collaborate and they can work together to push the needle, to push the ball forward. I can't remember the metaphor. To thread the needle. And so these asynchronous communication channels really allow for that to happen, allow for people to sort of parallel process, to move in and out of conversations. And so that's what we've built with Legal Connection. It's less about the video calls, and it's much more about the texting and the rich text communication, dropping files in, threaded conversations and so on. But I think that's where the big opportunities lie. And on that front, I think we're still quite early on. People are using it, people are using the product and enjoying it. And I'm hoping that lawyers are still going to see a lot of the benefits that this kind of work brings.
So you're about to enter into the next round of crowdfunding. So firstly, for those that don't know, what is crowdfunding, and why did you choose this route?
Okay, so we ran a pre-seed round, which we did through an accelerator. We then came to our seed round, and we looked at the options that were available. And with crowdfunding, basically the idea is that rather than one person writing you a check of £1 million or whatever it is, you get 100 or 1,000 people each to write you a check of £10 or £20, and they do it through a platform. We chose Crowdcube to be the platform. One of the reasons that we decided to go this route is because it gives us exposure on the product. I find every time I do a webinar where I share my screen and I show a little bit of Legal Connection, I'll end up getting a lawyer calling me up or adding me on LinkedIn saying, "Oh, I saw that product. Can I have another look at it? Can we try it for our law firm?" So by going on Crowdcube, I assume that we'll get a mix of lawyers and non-lawyers that are interested in the product for various reasons, that want to invest in us. But it's a good opportunity to actually bring users on board and have them exposed to the product and invest in our product. And the way we've set up the campaign, if you invest, say, £500, then you get 2 years worth of the product free of charge. So effectively, our users can become invested in the product at the early stage. They become evangelists. They hopefully tell their friends about it. Legal Connection grows through network effects. So each lawyer invites other lawyers to communicate and collaborate. And so, yeah, it makes a lot of sense for our model, and I'm quite excited about it.
And what about how does COVID, has that presented any challenges or even opportunities for crowdfunding support? Let people know.
I don't know. It depends who you ask. A lot of VC firms will say it's business as usual. Other ones will say that they're not writing big checks at the moment. But I do see that crowdfunding is becoming more and more serious and more viable. It used to be that crowdfunding was for little gadgets that you say, I want to make this I don't know, rollerblades that go on fire or something like that.
Beer companies or something, yeah.
Yeah, and then you'll collect a whole lot of money, and then you'll build the thing, and then everyone who invested in you will get some of the thing. That was sort of crowdfunding 0.1. When I look at what's on Crowdcube at the moment and what's on Seeders, which is the other platform, it's serious companies. It's companies that are in the same league as the companies that were in our cohort. In fact, another one of our cohort, Yazy, just raised something like 400K on Seeders, which is another crowdfunding platform. They were part of our Antler Accelerator. So I think there's some really interesting companies. There's some really good companies, and it gives access to the man on the street to put 100 quid into a company that he or she thinks is going to be successful, and to see where it goes and to own a piece of that company.
I mean, I've been to a lot of these accelerator programs, and so often, the typical format is that, they get lots of VCs, venture capitalists, for those who are not sure what that means, but an investor types into a room, you demonstrate your product, do the big pitch, and hopefully you get some investment from the back of that. Obviously, that's not allowed anymore. You had to cancel an event recently, didn't you, or not? Yeah, a little while ago.
Yeah, there've been a few. There's one coming up that I'm quite nervous about. I was asked by The Economist to speak at an event upcoming, and I've been showing off to everyone I know that I'm going to be speaking at the event by The Economist. So I'm not sure if they're postponing that or if that one's going virtual. But for sure, right at the beginning of COVID, we were at the Microsoft Reactor and we planned our own event with the SRA, the Solicitors Regulation Authority. It took us ages to confirm them that they would appear at our event, and I was also heartbroken when I heard that all events had been cancelled at the Microsoft Accelerator. But then what we'll end up doing is, it was actually the SRA who said to us, listen, although we can't make it in person, we will appear virtually. Okay. And initially I thought, that sounds really stupid. Why would anyone want to attend a virtual event? But as it turned out, that we just went ahead with it. We said, look, since we've got the SRA, they're a big name, we're a little name. Let's use this opportunity. We got one or two other speakers, and we created the webinar. And we ran it in, I think it was April or May, really, really early on in the lockdown. I think we were one of the first within the legal space. When everyone else was cancelling their events, we had this webinar, and we had something like 150 people appear on it. People from all over the country, most of whom never would have come if it was at the Microsoft Reactor, because they were in Birmingham or Manchester or Liverpool or whatever it is. And off the back of that, we've had 3 more successful webinars, and it's really worked for us.
Yeah, fascinating. I mean, what a great opportunity for those that probably would focus on or miss an event because they can't get to it. They're at another event. So it's actually allowed VCs maybe and investors to get involved in more things and scale the market much quicker. Yeah,
every time we do one of these webinars, I have someone contact me on LinkedIn. Often while I'm on the webinar, I'm sort of singing and then I open my LinkedIn tab and I see that, and I'm like, hi, yes, nice to meet you. Yes, we can definitely connect for a coffee. So it's a great, a virtual coffee.
Yeah.
It's a nice networking tool, and it works. Maybe better even than if you're at a real conference. Because if you're at a real conference, you'd maybe meet the person, you'd exchange business cards. You'd then have this sort of stack of business cards you'd sit in your pocket for a couple of days, then you put them on your desk, and then eventually you throw them in the bin. If you're anything like me.
Yeah. So so we'll talk about that in terms of investment. But I know that when you go through this round, you mentioned you've got plans to grow your organisation. You've got lots of big plans ahead. So for those that are listening that may be interested in getting involved or joining a company like yours, this is the People First podcast. It's very much about you as a leader in this business, and obviously Stefan But what does leadership mean to your organisation, and how do you apply this in a remote environment?
Ooh, how do you apply it? Well, I'll first tell you what leadership means to me. So I think what leadership is not it's not bossing people around. It's not telling people what to do. That may come at some point in your career, but when you're early stage startup, what you really got to do is inspire people to join into your journey, into your cause. They're going to be earning very small amounts of money. Often they're incentivized by shares. But what they're really looking for is to buy into the dream that you're selling. And for me and Stefan, how that translated is we both came to Antler. We were both invited for different reasons. I came because I had this great idea, and I think Stefan was probably invited because he has really good technical skills and he would make a good CTO. So I was a sort of a CEO type, and he was a CTO type. And then what Antler do is they throw 80 or so people like us into a room together for 3 months, and they hope that we pair up. And so, it took me about a month or so of working the room and having coffees with different people. And eventually one day I sat down and showed the product to Stefan and said, look, this is Legal Connection. And as I understand, his initial reaction was, oh, tech for lawyers, that sounds super boring.
Yeah.
Not interested, but he'll have a little look. And then he looked some more, and then he said, oh, that's interesting. Doesn't this product exist already? And I said, no. In actual fact, what lawyers currently do is they'll send emails to each other, and then when they want to add each other to a case, they'll click on a whole lot of emails and drag them into another email, or they'll print everything out and send it through the fax machine or the and then he didn't believe me, and he went and did a bit of research on his own, and so we had this sort of.
So you had a connection, yeah.
Yeah, we had a little bit of a dating phase, where you see if there's going to be co-founder chemistry. And while he was evaluating me, he was evaluating about 3 or 4 others. And so then he narrowed down the 4 companies down to the 1 company he wanted to work with, which was my company. And so, so I guess for me, leadership was all about convincing Stefan that this is what he should work on.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's it is a key point in the startup, and it is about people have got to buy into that journey. There's some well-known book around. It's called Everything Breaks at 25, because at 25 culture starts to form, and people then start to want they want jobs and careers, whereas in the early start it's all about the excitement, the journey, building something, and the people that you have now are often different to the people when you go to sort of 25. You will get a lot of people in there. Obviously some people become invested in the business. I mean, is that something you're looking to offer, option pool, shares, that sort of thing? Is that what you're looking to do?
Sure. So one of the things that we signed with Antler, and everyone who went through the VC signed the same thing, and these are pretty standard terms, is Antler bought in 120K for 10%. Then myself and Stefan own the other 80% in theory, and then 10% of that is set aside for something called option pool. An option pool, it can be given a 0.5% or a 1%, can be given to an early employee or to an advisor on the business. I'm sure you've heard stories about people who did things like painting a mural at Facebook and landed becoming a millionaire off the result. That's because of the option pool. So Legal Connection, we have an option pool. Just to explain to you a little bit more about how it works, and again, these are absolute standard terms. There's something called a 1-year cliff and a 4-year vest.
Okay. No, do you want to explain a bit more?
Sure. So 1-year cliff means that let's say your option is going to be a 0.5%. You're going to own a 0.5% of Legal Connection as part of your remuneration.
Yeah.
You will typically have a 1-year cliff, which means you have to stay in the company for 1 year in order to get any of that. You'll then have a 4-year vest, meaning that your shares will be given to you quarter over 4 years.
Okay.
So what will you have? You have 16th, and then you'll have an 8th. No, you'll have an 8th, and then another 8th, another 8th, and then eventually you'll have your 0.5% if you stay for the full 4 years. So that's completely typical. Stefan and myself also have a 1-year cliff and 4-year vest of Legal Connection. If I leave or if he leaves, our shares, right now we've both been in the business for a year, so we've each vested a quarter of our shares, and the other 3 quarters we've got to continue to stay in the company to get. That's pretty normal, and for a early employee in a startup, a lot of people join startups for that reason. That's why a lot of people go and move to Silicon Valley, because they want to join startups to have these options. And London is becoming the Silicon Valley of Europe, and now things are even more complicated with remote work. But that's something that you guys obviously know a lot about.
Yeah. There's there's obviously it is an investment in there. It's a commitment to seeing it out. Especially in the legal tech industry, what we're seeing is these are high growth companies. They're growing rapidly. It's probably one of the best areas you can invest in right now. And from a role perspective, in organisations like yourself, not even just sort of VCs.
Can I ask you a question? What
Sure.
sort of people do you place in these companies? Is it lawyers? Is it technologists? Is it a mix?
Yeah, no, we don't do lawyers. We do technologists. So technology, cybersecurity, business change and transformation specialists. So maybe companies going through that next phase of growth, for example, and we provide the sort of back office services, so HR, finance, procurement, all of those areas as well. So,
but your clients are legal tech providers.
Exactly, and legal services, yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah, obviously that includes law firms as well. So we work with top law firms, and we place into their technology teams as well. But we don't do lawyers. There are much better people at that than us. So yeah.
I'm just thinking for myself that as I grow my team, I will probably want to grow it with technologists, but then I'll also want to make sure that I'm hiring lawyers as I go along, since it's a legal tech product, and they all become sort of the product managers and sort of speak to the features that come about. Ooh. Pete? You've frozen. Maybe Michael.
Oh,
there you are. You're back.
Yeah, that's fine. Don't worry. We can edit that bit out. It's probably a good point to break on. So we're going to security. Look, this has been a big issue for many, and both from an organisation perspective and from the legal profession, as we touched on earlier. Working from home changes the way that we're exposed to different threats, and being exposed to hackers and viruses and all that sort of stuff, and this uncontrollable work environment, and people not being able to sit next to their boss and things like that. So how do you think law firms have adapted to this, and does this pose an opportunity or threat to the legal sector, and does your product combat any of that?
For sure. So look, obviously, everyone's been sort of every law firm was turned upside down and shaken at the beginning of lockdown. I spoke to so many lawyers who were trying to work out how remote desktop, for example, could work. I spoke to lawyers where I tried to share a Google document with them, and they couldn't do it because their computers are locked down. So the security measures are in place at law firms. Sometimes the security measures actually prevent certain apps from being used. What we do with Legal Connection is we've built a product that respects the way in which lawyers work, respects the privilege that forms around cases, but then also allows for some of the functionality that you would expect from a shared product, a product that works horizontally within SaaS. So lawyers don't have to use WhatsApp, for example, because they can use Legal Connection. And Legal Connection, a lawyer can be in a case and then can be removed from the case. And when they get removed, they lose access to all the files that were shared. Whereas if they were removed from a WhatsApp conversation or group, they would retain access to all those files. So that's one thing where I think that Legal Connection, actually does quite a good job. And then another thing that we've done is we've integrated with a product called Shield Pay. And Shield Pay are a award-winning fintech here in London. They built a product over a couple of years with the SRA to hold client money in what's called SRA regulated third-party managed accounts.
Yeah.
So if you imagine a property transaction or a business purchase, the client will typically put the money in the trust account of the lawyer, and there can be a lot of fraud which happens in the moment of the funds going to the lawyer and in the moment of the funds leaving the lawyer's account. So ShieldPay have created an entire solution just around this, around the holding of client funds, doing KYC, anti-money laundering, all the precautions that you need to take into account when you're holding client money. Shield Pay do that on behalf of the law firms. And so what we do at Legal Connection is integrate with Shield Pay. So there's a sort of a Shield Pay wallet associated with every matter. So if if your client is purchasing a property, they would put the money into the Shield Pay wallet. They can then see the money in real time. If the lawyer needs to draw some of that money out for disbursements, they can draw it out. The client can see the balance. It's super duper high tech, very new user experience. Not what you'd expect when dealing with the law firm.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that speaks to
fantastic.
More and more.
Yeah. Seems so obvious when you say it. And they've got a long way to come, haven't they, by the sounds of things. So
yeah. When I first designed it, it was just a prototype, and I would show it to people. Like it looked like a little crypto wallet. So here's your chat with the lawyer. Here's where you share your files, and here's your money. And they'd say, "What? Let me see that." And show me that button here. You can see there's your cash balance, and there's the money that the lawyer takes, and there's a little pay, and it's sort of like a PayPal of law. And that got us a lot of attention. And then we met the guys from Shield Pay, and they said, "Look, we can make that happen for you. We can actually we've built this feature." And so putting the two products together has been, a big part of what we've worked on this year. So bringing fintech and legal tech together.
And so does that, this technology, the way I see it, and like in lots of other sectors, it's enabled the smaller, more sort of startup legal firms, if you like, rather than having to be attached to a big corporate. You've got all the technology and the infrastructure to be able to get things set up and having things like that. Does that sort of provide that solution?
Yeah, for sure. The SRA, the Solicitors Regulation Authority, they've been working on some rules for the last few years to enable freelance solicitors to work outside of the traditional paradigm of a law firm. So, and then on top of the freelance solicitors, you've got something called the hub model, the chambers model, the idea that lawyers can work together in a sort of a loose collaboration, and so that needed to come into effect. All the regulations around that needed to come into effect before the technology that we were building could become useful. So a part of what we built at Legal Connection is the ability that, let's say, 5 lawyers, they know each other, maybe they went to law school together, maybe they met each other at a conference, but they've got some level of trust. They get together and they say, "Look, we're going to win a piece of business from a big corporate." And then they can join together on Legal Connection, quite quickly create what we call a virtual law firm, and then on top of that, create a Shield Pay account and link that Shield Pay account to that virtual law firm. And then they're up and running. They didn't have to go to a high street bank. They didn't have to open a premises. They are effectively running on the power of their networks. And one interesting thing about law is that most people who are looking for a lawyer, they don't Google or look for an ad. They generally look for a referral, either from someone in the network or from a lawyer in the network. It's one of these weird things that if you want a lawyer, you'll ask another lawyer.
Yeah.
So those network effects are sort of baked into the core of Legal Connection. And it's early days, but what we're seeing is people using Legal Connection in very interesting ways. To leverage this sort of legal gig economy, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, okay. So sweeping briefly from pandemic to Brexit, let's, we've got a few last minute sort of quick fire questions. And so pandemic to Brexit, how do you see Brexit affecting the market and the legal industry, if at all? I mean, what's your views on that?
I don't know if I've got anything straight. If I said anything, I'd probably just be talking shit.
Fair enough. No, that's I think that's probably the general consensus. Nobody knows, do they? And it's and anyone that does, they tend to be far left viewed.
The only thing I know about Brexit is that Brexit is good for lawyers because lawyers work around compliance, lawyers work around rules and understanding rules, and so all the chaos that Brexit brings. Lawyers, can only capitalize on it. So, I don't think it's bad news for the legal profession.
No, they tend to be quite resilient, don't they, in all areas. So,
you'll find a lawyer who will help you, make sense of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, have you got any thoughts, insight on how you think the legal tech sector will change over the next sort of 3 to 6 months? As everyone starts to get back to some sort of normality.
The legal tech sector.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm seeing so much innovation. it seems like the legal tech products that I'm seeing and that I'm exposed to, they never stopped. They never stopped working. I work with a really talented bunch of guys named the Cosmonauts, guys and girls, called Cosmonauts, who are based out of Fulham, and they've been operating at full tilt. They run legal tech events, which they've all put online. All of my events are run by them. They've helped us with our fundraising. They've helped us with our business development. And when I go to their office, I just see activity. Everyone is working very, very hard on legal tech. Everyone understands that the entire legal system, the way lawyers worked for 100 years, has all been turned on its head. It's a very, very, it's an opportunistic moment, and people are capitalizing. Technologists, we love change, we love disruption, and when we see it, we just work really, really hard.
Cool. And in your opinion, what are the secrets to an engaged remote workforce?
What are the secrets to an engaged remote workforce?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that what I make sure that I do, I've got a very small team at the moment. So what I do is I make sure to check in on each person individually, make sure that each person is sort of happy, understands what they need to be doing, understands the future of the company, where we're going, and it's a pretty easy job. Since I've only got about 5 people, it's not too hard to keep on top of it. If I was leading a team of 25 people or 100 people or 1,000 people, I'm not sure what I'd do. But for now, I just make sure that I connect with each one.
Really valuable. I think even as simple as you say it is, there are things that can easily be forgotten. In the sort of the chaos of getting a business off the ground, and you expect everybody to know those things and actually just think everyone's okay. So taking the time to check in and that they're okay, they know what they're doing. I think is vitally important.
Yeah, I think people enjoy working on something where they can see the value in what they're doing. And when you're at our stage, we've got customers that are using the product, and so every day we're putting out fires. And people like working at a company where they can see, if this problem came up, boom, I just solved it. Now this problem came up, boom, I've just solved it.
Yeah.
And so they can feel that what they're doing is important. They're not just building something which is then sitting on a shelf. And that's where I am right now. And so the engagement, I think, comes from knowing that they're working on something meaningful, and it's really exciting.
Yeah, fantastic. And final question then from me. So what's the biggest piece of learning or advice that you can give other leaders that are navigating this period at the moment? Other legal tech people in the startup world. What piece of advice could you give them? From your experiences.
Yeah, I think it's so important to get yourself out there, put yourself in front of people every chance you get. Me right now talking on this podcast is just another example of me getting my name out there, saying the word Legal Connection over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And that didn't, come by accident. If there's a global legal hackathon, I always go. If there's a webinars, I join. If there any event, any time I can interact with people, I'm there. It's a little bit more tricky during COVID than it was before, because before you could just go to every single event and put the little name tag on. But really get your name out there, get yourself out there. And the other thing, if you haven't heard it before, is don't keep your idea a secret. I've heard so many people, and at the beginning of my journey, I would show them the product, I'd tell them what I'm working on, and their immediate reaction was, shh, don't tell anyone. This is a great idea. Protect the IP, patent it, don't tell people what you're doing. But that's really terrible advice. You've got to tell every single person what you're working on. It's only by talking about it that it becomes real, and that was certainly the turning point for me, was just showing it over and over again, not worrying about people stealing my idea, and just really taking ownership of what I was doing. And if anyone else has got a really killer idea and they want to change the world, just tell every single person about it, and you'll make it real. Amazing,
love that. Guy, that was fantastic. Really, really enjoyed that. So thank you very much for your time. It's really valuable. If you're interested in joining a fast-growing legal tech business like Guy's, then please get in touch with him. He's super active on LinkedIn. And equally, if you're looking to invest in his business, funding is now open, and we're going to provide a link to that below this YouTube video and also in the podcast as well. And it'll be out on LinkedIn as well. So, Guy, I wish you every success. It sounds like you're on a fantastic path, and yeah, I hope it all works out for you.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me on the show, and for everyone listening, thanks for listening all the way through.